Gérard de Nerval was the nom-de-plume of the French writer, poet, essayist and translator Gérard Labrunie, a major figure of French Romanticism who worked in many genres. He is best known for his poems and novellas, especially the collection Les Filles du Feu, which includes the novella Sylvie and the poem El Desdichado. Biography. Early life. Gérard Labrunie was born in Paris on the 22nd of May 1808. His mother, Marie-Antoinette Laurent, was the daughter of a clothing salesman. Gérard's father, Étienne Labrunie, a military doctor, was given a formal position in Napoleon's Grande Armée QT. When he joined the campaign in Prussia, his wife followed him. On the 29th of November 1810, when Gérard was 2 years old, Marie-Antoinette died by her husband's side in Glogau. He was brought up by his maternal great-uncle, Antoine Boucher, in the countryside of Valois at Mortefontaine. On his father's return from war in 1814, Nerval was sent back to Paris. He frequently returned to the countryside of Valois during holidays, and he returned to it in imagination later in his chansons et légendes du Valois. In 1822 Gérard began classes at the Collège Charlemagne alongside Théophile Gautier, who became a lifelong friend. His second year at Charlemagne is when he tried writing for the first time, compiling his first manuscript, a 140-page manuscript. One poem of his, in praise of Napoleon, Napoléon à la France guerrière élégies nationales, was published under the name Gérard. His prose translation of Goethe's Faust, published in 1828, established his reputation. Goethe himself read Nerval's translation and called it very successful, even claiming that he preferred it to the original. Hector Berlioz relied on Nerval's translation for his work La Damnation de Faust. Sénécal. In 1829, having received his baccalaureate degree and under pressure from his father to find himself a profession, he took up a position at a notary's office. But he kept his heart set on literature. When Victor Hugo asked him to support his play Hernani under attack from conservative critics suspicious of romanticism, Gérard was more than happy to join the fight. Though an eager participant in this so-called romantic revolution, Gérard was largely indifferent to the July Revolution that also took place in 1830. Instead, Gérard set himself 2 anthology projects, one on German poetry, and one on French poetry. Alexandre Dumas and Pierre-Sébastien Laurentier arranged a library card for him so he could carry out his research. The first anthology included translations of Klopstock, Schiller, Berger, and Goethe, and met with less enthusiasm than his translation of Faust. The second anthology included poems by Ronsard, Joachim du Bellay, Jean-Antoine de Baif, Guillaume du Bartis, and Jean-Baptiste Chassagnet. By the fall of 1830, the Sénécal, a group created by Saint Beuve to ensure Victor Hugo's success with Hernani, had assembled many famed writers, including Alfred de Vigny, Alfred de Musset, Charles Nodier, Alexandre Dumas, and Honoré de Balzac. After Hernani's success, the Sénécal began to fall apart. That's when a new group appeared, the Petit Sénécal, created by the sculptor Jean-Bernard du Seigneur. Gérard attended some of the meetings, which took place in du Seigneur's studio. Gérard, following Hugo's lead, started to write plays. Le Prince des Sots and La Rue l'Expiation were shown at the Théâtre de l'Odéon and met with positive reviews. He started to use the pseudonym Gérard de Nerval, inspired by the name of a property near Loisy which had belonged to his family. Le Doyenné, and work with Dumas. In January 1834, Nerval's maternal grandfather died and he inherited needed around 30,000 francs. That fall, he headed to southern France, then traveled to Florence, Rome and Naples. On his return in 1835, he moved in with a group of romantic artists at Impasse du Doyenne. In May of that year, he created Le Monde Dramatique, a luxurious literary journal that made him squander his inheritance. Debt-ridden, Gériard finally sold it in 1836. Getting his start in journalism, he traveled to Belgium with Gautier from July to September. In 1837, Piquillot was shown at the Opéra Comique. Despite Nerval's work on the project, Dumas was the only name on the libretto. Jenny Colin played the main role. Nerval may have fallen in love with the actress. Some specialists claim that his unrequited love for her is what inspired many of the female figures that appear in his writing, including the Virgin Mary, Isis, the Queen of Saba. Other experts disagree with this biographical analysis. Despite Dumas' refusal to let him take credit for his work, Nerval continued to collaborate with Dumas on plays. In the summer of 1838, he traveled with Dumas to Germany to work on Elia Couteau-Burkitt, which eventually premiered at the Théâtre de la Porte Saint-Martin on 16 April 1839. 6 days after the premiere of another play the pair worked on together called L'Alchimista. In November 1839, Nerval traveled to Vienna, where he met the pianist Marie Pleyel at the French embassy. First nervous breakdowns. Back in France in March 1840, Nerval took over Gautier's column at La Presse. After publishing a third edition of Faust in July, including a preface and fragments of Second Faust, he traveled to Belgium in October. On the 15th of December, Piquillot premiered in Brussels, where Nerval crossed paths with Jenny Colin and Marie Pleyel once again. After a first nervous breakdown on the 23rd of February 1841, he was cared for at the St. Columb Hostel. On the 1st of March, Jules Janin published an obituary for Nerval in the journal Des Débats. After a second nervous breakdown, Nerval was housed in Dr. Esprit Blanche's clinic in Montmartre, where he remained from March to November. Travels. On the 22nd of December 1842, Nerval set off for the Near East, traveling to Alexandria, Cairo, Beirut, Constantinople, Malta and Naples. Back in Paris in 1843, he began to publish articles about his trip in 1844. His journey to the Orient appeared in 1851. Between 1844 and 1847, Nerval traveled to Belgium, the Netherlands, to London, producing a significant amount of travel writing. At the same time, he wrote novellas and opera librettos and translated poems by his friend Heinrich Heine, publishing a selection of translations in 1848. His last years are spent in dire financial and emotional straits. Following his Dr. Émile Blanche's advice, he tried to purge himself of his intense emotions in his writing. This is when he composed some of his best works. Nerval had a pet lobster, which he walked at the end of a blue silk ribbon in the Palais Royal in Paris. According to Tessifol Gautier, Nerval said, "Why should a lobster be any more ridiculous than a dog? Or a cat, or a gazelle, or a lion, or any other animal that one chooses to take for a walk. I have a liking for lobsters. They are peaceful, serious creatures. They know the secrets of the sea, they don't bark, and they don't gnaw upon one's monadic privacy like dogs do." And Goethe had an aversion to dogs, and he wasn't mad. Suicide. Increasingly poverty-stricken and disoriented, he committed suicide during the night of the 26th of January 1855, by hanging himself from the bar of a cellar window window in the Rue de l'Éveillé Lanterne, a narrow lane in a squalid section of Paris. He left a brief note to his aunt: "Do not wait up for me this evening, for the night will be black and white." The poet Charles Baudelaire observed that Nerval had delivered his soul in the darkest street that he could find. The discoverers of his body were puzzled by the fact that his hat was still on his head. The last pages of his manuscript for Aurélie à la Révélavie were found in a pocket of his coat. After a religious ceremony at the Notre Dame Cathedral, he was buried in the Père Lachaise cemetery in Paris, at the expense of his friends Théophile Gautier and Arsène Houssaye, who published Aurélie as a book later that year. The complete works of Gérard de Nerval are published in 3 volumes by Gallimard in the collection Bibliothèque de l'Épiéliacute. Assessments. In 1867, Nerval's friend Théophile Gautier wrote a touching reminiscence of him, La vie de Gérard, which was included in Gautier's Portraits et souvenirs littéraires. André Breton exemplifies the influence of Nerval's insistence on the significance of dreams on the Surrealist movement. Others influenced by Nerval's work include Marcel Proust, René Dormal, and Antonin Artaud. Umberto Eco, in his 6 Walks in the Fictional Woods, calls Nerval's Sylvie a masterpiece and analyzed it to demonstrate the use of temporal ambiguity. Henry Miller called Nerval an extraordinary French poet, and included him among a group of exemplary translators. In English we have yet to produce a poet who is able to do for Rimbaud what Baudelaire did for Poe's verse, or Nerval for Faust, or Morel and Laborde for Ulysses. Selected works by Gérard de Nerval. Les Faux-Souvenirs, published over several weeks in La Nationale, a daily newspaper. He later incorporated some of this material in Les Fils du Feu and in Les Illuminés. Voyage en Orient, an account of the author's voyages to Germany, Switzerland and Vienna in 1839 and 1840, and to Egypt and Turkey in 1843. Includes several pieces already published, including Les Amours de Vienne, which first appeared in the Revue de Paris in 1841. One of the author's major works, La Bohème Galante, a collection of short prose works and poems, including some of the set he later called Odelettes, dedicated and addressed to Arsène Houssaye. Les Nuits d'Octobre, a small collection of essays describing Paris at night. Lorly, Souvenirs de la Main, an account of his travels along the Rhine, also in Holland and Belgium. It includes the full-length play Éliacute Burkitt, under the title Scenes de la vie allemande. Les Illuminés, a collection of 6 biographical narratives in the form of novellas or essays. Sylvie, described by Nerval as un petit roman, it is the most celebrated of his works. Petit Château de Bohème, a collection of prose works and poetry, including the short play Carilla, which was subsequently included in Les Fils du Feu, and the Odelettes, and several of the sonnets later published as Les Chimères. Les Fils du Feu, a volume of short stories or idylls, including the previously published Sylvie, along with the sequence of 12 sonnets. Les Chimères. Pandora, another Fils du Feu, not finished in time for inclusion in that volume, written in the style of Sylvie and set in Vienna, also known as Le Pandora, often subtitled Suite des Amours de Vienne. Aurélie à la Révélavie, a fantasy-written interior autobiography. Promenades et Souvenirs, a collection of 8 essays after the manner of Les Nuits d'Octobre, describing the Saint-Germain neighborhood of the author's childhood and youth. The last, Chantilly, includes an essay portrait similar to those in Les Fils du Feu. Bibliography.